But if the waves could deepen and incorporate more silent levels of the water, the waves could become the waves of the ocean, the mighty waves. This is what happens in transcendental meditation. The surface activity of the conscious mind deepens and incorporates within its fold the depth of the subconscious.
Of course, the idea to put Paul's soul into Fall didn't succeed. Yes, I know it was a crazy idea, but we were going out of our heads with grief. Fall enjoyed the trip. I remember Fall smiled and picked his nose a lot. We never told him why we went, because if it had worked, William Campbell would have ceased to exist. He thought we were there to learn transcendental meditation or something like that. He was so stupid. He really had no idea. When we realized it didn't work, we flew back to England, disappointed, never to return. John had pushed the idea of dropping clues of Paul's death much further on Sgt. Pepper's. Of course, it would be a disaster if someone put the clues together. Our fans would hate us for the deception, and the Beatles would be finished. And then there was the nasty little matter of MI5, promising death would come knocking on our door. As we began a new recording session, I was summoned to the telephone. It was Maxwell. He told me straight up the Sgt. Pepper's cover was obviously a funeral for Paul. I know you wankers are up to something. You best be careful. And then he hung up. I went to John and begged him to discontinue all clues to Paul's death. That Maxwell was on to us and we'd given enough clues already. However, John's placing clues now seemed to be the driving force inspiring him to write music. But now I thought he was reckless. How could we sell millions of albums and the clues not be discovered? Fall was becoming a better singer and bass player, and the surgeries were coming to an end. Perhaps that would dispel the clues if they got noticed. Or so I hoped. Fall turned to marijuana to ease the anxiety over the cosmetic surgeries. But then he experimented with LSD a few times and was stupid enough to tell reporters.
How often have you taken LSD?
About 4 times.
Somehow Fall did not understand how the media works.
Do you believe that this was a matter which you should have kept private?
No, but the thing is, that I was asked a question by a newspaper. And the decision was whether to tell a lie or to tell him the truth, I decided to tell him the truth. I'll keep it a personal thing. If he does too, if he keeps it quiet. But he wanted to spread it, so it's his responsibility, for spreading it, not mine. The whole bit about how far it's going to go and how many people it's going to encourage is up to the newspapers and up to you, on television. I mean, you're spreading this now at this moment. This is going into all the homes, in Britain. And I'd rather it didn't, I'm quite prepared to keep it as a very personal thing, if you will too.
On the Magical Mystery Tour album cover, Fall was dressed as a hippopotamus with a gaping hole in his chest. John said it was to depict Fall as having no heart and no soul, since he wasn't real. John dressed himself as the walrus to again identify with Paul, who really was the walrus. The grotesque decapitated head on the side of the road we'd all witnessed. Next, John designed Beatles, so when the album was turned upside down, it became a phone number, 537-1438. John had secured this number on the London Phone Exchange and forwarded it to a funeral home. In the gatefold, Paul's drawing is the only one whose face is covered and eyes closed, a reference to his burial. Meanwhile, Capitol Records accidentally used an inside sleeve photo that exposed Fall looking very little like Paul McCartney. The back cover was designed to appear as a random pattern, but when turned 90 degrees, the white figures spell out the letters R.I.P., John telling his comrade to rest in peace. John also added a grisly image of a decapitated man with a clean cut above the shoulder, Paul's last state of being. At the beginning of the album, John inserted a screeching of tires and a loud explosion. A car crash. I was furious. I reminded John that MI5 was watching us. I threatened to quit, as I figured we'd be dead anyway. He grudgingly acquiesced. However, when the album was published, I discovered the car crash backwards masked with the right stereo mix in the middle of the first song. I Am the Walrus was inspired by John, screaming the same at Maxwell at the scene of Paul's accident. On the single, John placed I Am the Walrus right across Fall's head. He was wearing a fake mustache to hide the scars on his upper lip. The Eggman is Humpty Dumpty, who had cracked his head open just like Paul. The umpire phrases at the end are actually us gloating over how we'd succeeded in replacing Paul, and no one was the wiser. I say, bury me, bury my body, oh untimely death, at the end of the song. In Strawberry Fields, the lyrics are directed at the fans. Living is easy with eyes closed. It was easy for them to enjoy the Beatles. But we were incredibly stressed at maintaining the deception. It's getting hard to be someone. Nothing is real. At the very end of the song, John says, I buried Paul. Hello, goodbye is Fall speaking to the ghost of Paul. You say goodbye, and I say hello. In Blue Jay Way, Paul is depicted trapped in the burning car. Please don't be long, for I may be asleep. On the reverse is a reference that Paul was going to the gods. He said, "Get me out." Paul is Hare Krishna, it seems. On the day of the Magical Mystery Tour release, Moxwell appeared at Abbey Road Studios with 4 tough-looking MI5 agents. Moxwell put his foot right through Ringo's bass drum head as Ringo fell backwards. He ordered us, "Come." John, Paul, Ringo and I silently followed, with the 4 toughs in behind. We once again piled into Moxwell's large black van and sped off. Arriving at a warehouse, the agents exited the van, each dragging one of us by the hair and then slamming us against a wall. Paul begged them not to punch him in the face. Moxwell wailed, "Listen, you cunts! I told you to stop this stupid game of dropping clues about your dead comrade." My agents called the number and got the funeral home. We used our best plastic surgeons on this problem. If we are found out, it's going to jeopardize support for the intelligence service. In case you didn't know, we are facing down the KGB all across Europe. We can't allow you cunts to endanger our operations, nor Her Majesty's kingdom, nor the free world for that matter. If we see any more clues, we'll have no problem arranging a car accident or for a deranged fan to off the lot of you. Moxwell nodded, and each of us got a hard punch to the stomach from our personal goon. We were driven back to the studio, not saying a word. Deeply shaken, we agreed the new album would simply be called The Beatles, with a blank white front and back cover to satisfy Moxwell. However, John insisted that as Moxwell had mentioned merely the album covers, we could still place clues in songs. Despite everything, John clearly designed the titles so that when holding a mirror to the Beatles, it reveals the message, "He be ice" for Paul, alongside the number 3 for the 3 remaining Beatles. With no album cover to place clues on, John created a collage poster that was included with the LP.